Hello and welcome to the Film Whisperers, where two movie nerds talk all things film with a contemporary lens. My name is Saj.
And I'm Alice.
This topic that we're going to talk about today is one that is an interesting thing to explore.
Yes, there's some strong opinions on that.
Yeah.
Film adaptations.
Yeah, film adaptations of books.
Of books.
Of books, yeah. I have to ask you, are you a reader?
Yes and no. I seem to not have as much time. I only seem to read when I'm on holiday.
Yeah.
Or I'm relaxing. Otherwise, big audible.
Yeah, Audible, yeah,
Yeah.
same.
Like all the time, anywhere I'm driving, when I'm cooking, things like that. But otherwise, I really don't feel like I read as much. I read like 3-4 books a year.
Okay.
It's really bad.
Okay.
What about you?
Yes, I mean, I'm not a massive reader. I know some people can just get through a book a week. I'm not that person, but I try and do one book a month.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so for me, it's just about allocating time to decompress with a book is really important. But I also would count an audiobook as a book because at the end of the day, it is doing the same thing, which is it's mentally giving you the vocabulary of what's on a sheet of paper. So
Yeah.
so I don't mind either way.
I like to say that it's like the same thing.
It is. I mean, I would say it is the same thing because at the end of the day, if someone says to you, "I've read a book," I mean, they still are completely aware of what the story is. So
Yeah.
So it is interesting, right? When films decide to take a book and then turn it into this visual adaptation.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you reckon this is a controversial topic?
I think it's because book lovers love the books that they read, and it really becomes, I don't know, part of their heart kind of thing. They've really invested in this world that an author's created for them. And then when they see an interpretation of that book on a visual medium, there's so many things which could go wrong and right, that I think that's the issue, basically, that they have an idea of what it should look like, and then when they see it's not measuring up, they get very upset because they're kind of destroying their world which they've created in their head.
Okay. Yeah.
Would you agree?
I would agree. Yeah, along with that, the casting choices play into it as well, where people may think of a certain actor or actress or person looking like the character that they're reading about, and then when someone else gets cast, it's almost like a what the hell. Yeah, so it's, I would say it's most of the time it's painted with disappointment.
Yes.
Rather than the glory around, oh, what an amazing adaptation this was.
There's so many people that have this, they've created this own world in their head, how they imagine it to look. There's just so many fans out there. You can't please everyone.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's going to be the creators of the film.
Yeah.
It's their adaptation, isn't it? And
so very good point. So that's going to lead us to the first talking point, which is creative liberty versus the original source material. I think that there is this weird thing that Hollywood does where they get a lot of funding for films. I mean, usually a film would cost a couple of million to make.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, a lecturer marking or a teacher marking your essay or your work. It's like they come in with this red pen and go, no, yes, change that, tweak this.
Yeah.
And I sometimes wonder whether it's that power play where you have this author who, a book is obviously not easy to write. It probably takes an author years to put together a story. Mm-hmm. And then in comes this influential producer or screenwriter that just decides to tear this story apart. And I sometimes think that it's that influential power play that screenwriters have, where they just think that they're better than the author who created the source material, so they make the change. So I think part of it is that, the power play. What are your thoughts?
I think you're definitely onto something, but it's more cooks in the kitchen when it comes to the film. Like when it's the author that writes the book, generally one author. Yeah. They create this world, but then it's their choice to sell it, to make a film. But their ego really needs to be left at the door, because it's not just the screenwriters adapting it, it's the producers, it's, you know, even the actors. It's like so many different people bringing their thoughts on how to adapt it as well visually. It's not just like creating the script, but like how they can actually translate this into a visual medium. Because, you know, when you're following this person in a book, you getting inside their head, you're reading their thoughts. But then in a film, you've just got an actor kind of showing you how they're feeling.
Yeah. Okay.
You know? So you kind of lose a lot.
Yeah.
Really, don't you? A lot of insight.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Do you have a favorite book to film adaptation? And I'm saying that specifically where you've read a book, you've absolutely loved the book, and then you've seen the film and you've thought, actually, that's been a really good adaptation.
I don't think I have.
Really?
I don't think there's been a book that I've read and then watched the film and gone, oh, perfect. No.
Okay.
But there's been a lot of opposites. So I've watched a film and then read the book afterwards and enjoyed it more. It's kind of like you watch the film, you get a preview, and then you read it and you get more insight, more backstory.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I like that. So like the Wild is one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And I like Bridget Jones's Diary.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
What about you?
Yes, there's one film that I can think of where I read the book first and then I saw the film and it was just amazing. And it's this film called We Need to Talk About Kevin.
Yeah.
And I really absolutely loved how they, I guess, transitioned the book to the film, because it's very heavy source material, and I thought they did a brilliant job by casting Tilda Swinton in the main role, and just everything about that world where this mum's trying to really work out why on earth her kid did what he did. The other thing I did just to prepare for this was just ask a bunch of people what their favorite book to film adaptation was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've not read the books, but The Lord of the Rings keeps coming up as a really good adaptation. Have you read Lord of the Rings?
I haven't read the whole thing. I have read some of it.
Okay.
But I love Lord of the Rings, like the films.
Okay,
They're
and
one
you
of my
believe it
favorites.
was a good adaptation?
I feel like because I haven't finished it, I can't say, but from what I've read, yes, it's good. And then people who have read it seem to like it too.
Mm-hmm.
I think the writer, he really goes on a bit kind of like, oh gosh, what's the guy's name? You know the guy that wrote Game of Thrones?
George Martin or whatever.
Yeah, George R.R. Martin.
George R. Martin, yeah.
So he, like Tolkien, really describe scenes, and this is what I've been told, they take a long time to just really describe something. Maybe it's just a meal. And then with the film, it's kind of, this pages of description, and then you just see it. So
yeah, okay, right. Like... Yeah, okay.
So that's what my sister said anyway.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I love Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
so
okay, so that's great. So that's one. A few other suggestions that came through were Train Spotting, Stand By Me, The Silence of the Lambs. Apparently that was a really good adaptation as well. The Pride and Prejudice film with Keira Knightley apparently is also a good adaptation.
That is good. Yes. And you know what? Talking about that, Little Women.
Okay. I've not read
the most recent one.
Yeah.
With, what's her name?
Florence Pugh and Meryl Streep.
Yeah. I really liked that adaptation.
Okay.
The classics, I think it's enough times past where you're allowed to have more creative license when you're creating the film.
Yeah. And
you're really kind of doing what we like to discuss, is getting an old source material and modernizing it.
Yeah.
I think you get the older it is, the more space you've got for creative license.
Another film, there's two other films that I can think of where, again, I read the book, it was absolutely amazing, and then the film sort of matched that. Did you ever watch The Dry with Eric Bana?
No.
It was a really good, it's an Australian murder mystery.
Yeah.
And I thought they did an excellent job of taking the source material and just making it into the film. In fact, it was really spot on with the way the chronological order of events and everything that happened in the book. They really recreated that really well in the film. The other book that I was going to say is a good adaptation in my opinion. Now, this is controversial. I thought the first Harry Potter film, the first one, I'm not talking about the rest of it, just the first one, was an excellent adaptation of the book.
Yeah.
The casting choices were just brilliant, and I think you could not have asked for, a better Snape, a better McGonagall, and with what they had to work with in terms of the source material and the duration of the film, I thought they did an excellent job. Now, again, it's a bit controversial, but again, in my opinion, I in fact, in terms of casting choices, I would say it's the best cast franchise where you compare it from book to film.
Yes.
Okay, you obviously disagree with the first one.
It's hard because you are just saying the first one. I think the first one's probably the best adaptation. But that was one of the first films as a kid where I saw, a book which I loved become a film. And so I was, my little 10-year-old heart was like breaking for anything that was slightly different. So, for example, Harry Potter's eyes are supposed to be green and then they're blue because the actor couldn't wear the contacts. Or Ginny is really bad. Is she in the first one? I think she's in there for like a second.
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
But yeah, she's such a nothing, no chemistry, no personality character. And there's little bits which were missing out of the book. But that was like the first film where I realized, okay, they can't do everything. For a while, I was like really upset with it. But as an adult, I can see that they can't. That world is so big. And the fantasy novels and sci-fi novels, it is a world building story. So it's very hard to be able to put that into a new book. There's so much detail. So I understand it. But when I first watched Harry Potter as a 10, 12, however old, it was upsetting. But I guess you have a point. The actors, it's pretty spot on. The other thing is, it was so Americanized. Like at the end, I think they all clap. And I'm like, they would never do that in a UK film.
Yeah.
That was such an American director's decision. Everyone clap at the end, like, come off it. But no, but it is good. It is good. But how about films that you don't like that are adaptations?
Again, I'm really trying to think about films where I've read the book and I've seen the film and I've just gone, whoa, what on earth's this? I can't think of any, I'm going to be honest. And I think a lot of it, I've sort of watched it and gone, it's all right, but it didn't really upset me that they took creative liberties. I can say, have you heard of the film The Nanny Diaries with Scarlett Johansson?
Yes.
So I read the book first, and one of the main characters in there, who is her boss in it, the way she's written in the book is very, very, very different to the way she's depicted in the film. And that's just one example, but I remember thinking, it is what it is, really.
Yeah.
So I think there are adaptations like that where they probably make changes for whatever reason. So I can't think of anything that's just atrocious. But what about you?
I have more sympathy now. I think there's none which I'm like, oh, that's absolutely terrible. Again, I just I accept it. I accept that it's not going to be the same. But back in the day, I used to be really upset with books. But now I'm just like, it is what it is. But let's talk about what makes a good adaptation and what responsibility does the writer have, the script writer have to the source material. What would you think?
I would say when you get given a film to make, you have 2 hours worth of storytelling time. In my opinion, you can't capture every single thing that the book has. If it takes me 1 whole month to read a book, right? And I'm thinking that's a lot of source material there.
Yeah.
How do you then translate this to a 2-hour movie? So the point I'm trying to make is, I would say as a screenwriter, you need to take the key events of the book that matter to the storyline and stick to it. The second thing is, I would say casting is important, but it is also not the most important. So let's take the Harry Potter franchise. So one of the criticisms is that there's not many people of color in it. If they had made McGonagall played by Viola Davis, hypothetically, would it have mattered? No, it would not have. Think of that diversity as well when you are casting people, unless of course it is strictly stipulated that this person is of a particular race. So for example, in the books, the Harry Potter books, I think there's a character called Cho Chang, or the Patel. Are they sisters?
Patty Patel.
Yeah, Pavita, and
yeah.
so if they'd cast a Caucasian in either of those roles, that would have been a bit strange. So yeah. So anyway, so I would say casting is, but it isn't important as well. So I would say those two things.
I think you're right. I agree with you. We want the key elements of the film, and then also the essence of the film, the world which they've created. But I think it's hard. It's hard because when you're adapting a book, you know, everyone loves it so much. And the more fans there are, the more opinions, the more people you're going to disappoint.
Yeah.
But I don't think, unless the authors stipulated, I want this and this and this, I don't think they have to, if you're a creative and you want to use this source material and you want to make as the basis, but then make your own film and your own story, you can just take what you want from it. You're making your own version of it. It's like a DJ. It's like, you know, you're editing it into your own world. It depends how many people love the book and the point of your adaptation. But the point of your adaptation might be to flip it on its head. You know, you change the roles, the role reversal. You know, maybe you're looking from the protagonist's point of view, or maybe, you know, from a side character's point of view, the best friend's point of view. You're delving into this world, and then maybe taking a different point of view. Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
But you know, one film that did do that, I mean, it's not that they changed the point of view, but they completely took creative liberties with the film, with the book, was Legally Blonde. Now, did you know that was a book?
No.
Yeah, so it's based on a book. The author is Amanda Brown, and I read the book. I mean, I saw the film and then I read the book, and the book's completely different. And I think the only thing that the book had that the film had was a character of Elle, the character of Warner, her boyfriend, and the boyfriend's fiance, Vivian, and the whole thing about Elle getting dumped and then her going to law school. And in the book, it's Stanford, not Harvard. That's the only thing that was there. Everything else was created as a new concept, I guess. So, and look, I mean, the film is a masterpiece in my opinion, and the book, I'd say the book can just be binned, like it's whatever. No one even knows it's a book. That's how much liberty that the screenwriters took with it.
You've touched on a point there, screenwriters. It's usually a bunch of people. Yeah. Like I mentioned before, it's not just one author, it's a whole bunch, and they're really like having a big creative party making a new story, which they think people of that time and place are going to appreciate, or they just want to see it.
With the book to film adaptations, let's just talk about casting for a change.
Okay.
You mentioned one of the books that you loved, Wild.
Yes.
Now, what was wrong? I know. I just want to ask you about it because I know we spoke briefly about the casting choice.
Yes. So I really like the film Wild. It was adapted by Reese Witherspoon's production company, and she decided to take the lead role. Now, in the book, which is a true story. Yeah,
Cheryl Strayed.
So it's a little bit different. Yeah, Cheryl Strayed. She's 26 when she does this journey. She travels the PCT, Pacific Crest Trail along California. It's a 3-month hike by herself in the 90s, no phone and stuff. And then so she's quite young. And when Drew Barrymore, when Reese Witherspoon does it, she's a bit older. She's getting into late 30s, I'd say. Yeah. So I feel like it changed a little bit, but when I step back, it doesn't really matter. It's really just about a woman on her own going through discovering herself, you know, and coming back to herself. Yeah. So at first I was like, oh, but then it doesn't matter. You know, these little things which you get in your head but then you really think, actually, it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter. It's still the essence of the film. You're still getting that journey.
Because that makes me want to talk about another topic, which is what about those films that we watch knowing that they're book adaptations? We've never read the book, but we're just watching the film. If it's a good film, so I did not know this, and I obviously I'm biased because I love Reese Witherspoon. I thought she was amazing in that film, and she did a really great job playing a character that she traditionally wouldn't play, and I thought she nailed it.
Yeah, no, it was good. She performed really well.
Yeah.
It's interesting though. Her kind of shtick is that she gets books and adapts them. That's kind of part of what her production company does.
Yeah.
And often she will put herself in it.
Yeah.
Is that ego, or I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, look, I think she mainly picks. No, not she mainly. She only picks books written by women. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think there was a time in Hollywood, and this was around 2014, 2015, when that new wave feminist movement was happening. There was this push for more female storytelling, or more female stories to be told. And I would say she was the pioneer in getting that up and about. So I would say she probably started getting those female stories out there. And I mean, she was also at the point of her career where she was starting to fade.
Yeah, the roles were drying up.
And I felt like she just went, you know what, screw this. I'm gonna do this myself, and I'm gonna cast myself in these roles because I've got enough money to do so.
And star power.
Yeah, and I would say she does it less now. I mean, she obviously she champions the stories to be told, but she definitely puts other people in there because there's a lot more films and TV shows that she just produces rather than. Yeah. But I mean, if you got to start it, I don't see what's wrong with that.
Yeah, I think that whole generation, they really did kickstart that more older female stories that we got to see, and I love her for it because there's so many stories which maybe I wouldn't have known. Wild, for example. Yeah. That I saw because she's like pushing for these female stories for us. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think you've got to start a trend somewhere, and I've got no issues with it being with her sort of putting casting herself in it because she's done the hard work, so why not?
As long as I think it's appropriate for the story, why not?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there was a time where it was a very well-known thing where when women got to a certain age in Hollywood, they'd rather just not exist because there was just what was it? I can't remember what the joke was. You're either driving Miss Daisy or another sort of variation of that where you play the grandma, you just play an old lady.
Yeah.
And I would say Reese Witherspoon changed that narrative, and people like Nicole Kidman and Kerry Washington, they started then doing the same thing, and we have more representation now. I also just wanted to touch on this film that apparently is an awful adaptation of a book.
Yeah.
But the film as a standalone film is great, and that is Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief.
Okay.
Have you seen this?
No.
Okay. It's a great film.
Why is it a good film?
The storytelling is fantastic. So it's the story of a guy finding out that his dad was Poseidon, the Greek god.
Oh.
So it's a high school sort of thing, and it just was really cool. And in my opinion, one of the best cameos I've seen is Uma Thurman playing Medusa.
Oh, yeah, that'd be cool.
So cool. But apparently, in the book, he's a kid. Whereas they aged the entire cast, and then they're all teenagers in this, and apparently it was just a disaster in terms of the fans seeing that and just going, you've ruined something. So so I don't know, is it okay if the film's a good film, but it doesn't pay respect to the source material? Is that okay?
I think it's fine.
Same.
Yeah. There's only so much you can do. You've got someone's imagination, which is endless, And then you've got the constraints of making a film, of what you can actually do. You could put the whole thing in CGI, or you could do it in animation.
Yeah.
But it's still not the same as your imagination. You've still got limitations. So I think that's totally fine. And for example, this one, you know, would you rather work with a child, or would you rather work with someone, maybe an adolescent or a teenager and stuff? You're probably going to want the adolescent. Yeah. Would you rather work with an animal or a human? Or, or a CGI, character. So I think that's fine. I strongly recommend people, if they haven't read the book and a movie comes out, I always say watch the movie first, because I feel like what we've talked about, you're going to be disappointed. Yeah. And you need to have that separation, or at least if you're going in, you've read the book, separate it and be like, okay, this is going to be different. It's a different story almost. Go in with a fresh, open mind. But I always think watch the movie first, then read and get the backstory. Okay. What do you think?
I disagree.
You disagree?
I only disagree because I think I separate things, which is why I just said it never really disappoints me when I see the film. Yeah. Because I think it's the experience that you have reading a book is just different, because it's almost like you got to find time to do it. And when you read it, you're absorbed into these sheets of paper that are throwing words at you that you can then sort of imagine what it's like. And I guess here's the thing. When you watch a film, you associate an actor with the character. That is what I don't like.
Yeah, that's true.
I like to read a book and have my own version of what I think this character should look like. Yeah. Or which actor or actress could play them. And I like to be surprised when I see the film. Yeah. To then kind of go, oh, this is a great adaptation. The Hunger Games, by the way, I've not read the books. I don't know, have you read the books?
Yeah, I think I read the first one.
Okay, so apparently that's another, it gets mixed reviews. And I'll never forget this where, and this is when I guess you got to be careful, but in terms of casting choices, one of the actresses in it, Jenna Maloney, she plays this really sort of tough character. Apparently the way people saw that character in the book and when they saw that person in the film were incredibly disappointed. And that was I found that interesting with the Hunger Games. And the same with this other character, Finnick. Apparently in the book he's described in one certain way, and then when people saw him in the film it was like, what the hell is this? But I think I like having that kind of dialogue with people where, when you read the book first, you have this idea of who this person should look like. And then, when you see it in film, it then sort of, it opens up conversations like, well, why did you think that this person was not a good fit? And anyway.
Yeah, you've got something to complain about if you've read the book first and you go in with people or discuss. Yeah. Have a healthy discussion. Yeah. Or complain.
Yeah. Oh, like, one of the more famous casting things that happened more recently was that 50 Shades of Grey book.
Yes. Yeah. And that's interesting, because that's like a adaptation of kind of the book and the series. Yeah. So it went from Twilight, the Twilight movie, and then a fan fiction on the book, but probably got some of the movie in there too. Yeah. To then a film about that adaptation. It was so bad. Yeah.
And they cast Dakota Johnson in this role. And again, I've not read the books, but apparently that was miscast as well. So yeah, I don't know.
I don't think she was that bad.
I never watched the films. I'm just happy to.
Neither have I.
Sure.
We have a podcast as well.
Yeah, we do.
It's called Rewind, Rethink. Yep. Movie podcast. Yep. You can get it on any podcast platform, and we'd love it if you could come by and listen, have a review.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you for watching Film Whisperers on Ben TV.